But what about the men? Whatever will they do? Let's clear up some misconceptions. We're going to talk about feminism, aka everyone's favorite subject. Often when someone tries to have a conversation about feminism, the question, but how does this affect men, is brought up before a conversation is even allowed to begin.
Well, yeah, I think that it's only fair that if you're going to claim to be progressive and fight for equal rights for both genders, that we are able to ask you questions surrounding the nature of your ideology, which, to my knowledge, only fights for the rights of one gender. And now, of course, you're going to say, no, we don't, we fight against sexism in all shapes and forms, but let's be honest here, feminism's focus is on women's issues, right? So naturally, if you're going to claim to fight for both genders, it's kind of a natural question to wonder about the other side. I can already imagine my detractors are going to come up in the comment section and say, does that mean you don't think we can have a conversation about women's issues and women's rights without first addressing the issues of men? Oh, sexism! Patriarchy at its finest. No, that's not what I'm trying to say. What I'm trying to say is that if you are going to start a conversation surrounding gendered issues, and you're going to claim to be as fair and balanced as you claim you are, then I think it only fair that you address both sides of the argument, and not just the woman's side.
Feminism is sexist. It's in the name. Feminism. Fem. An ism.
Well, at least you're honest. But if you were going to be a little more honest, you'd say, no, we don't fight for equal rights. We fight for women's rights, and we attempt to make it equal by fighting only for women's rights. Of course, that would make you sound like an incredible douche, but, you know, that's a separate issue.
The reason that feminism is primarily concerned with sexism that women face, and not so much that men face, is because women are the minority or the oppressed group.
Wait, what? Women are the minority in this country. Last I checked in North America, it was 50-50. But if, let's say you're not going by population, you're going to say, oh, well, women are a social minority in this area, or women are a minority in politics, or whatever. Okay. So, if you're going to go by that, then riddle me this. If women are 50% of the population, wouldn't they get 50% of the say in what goes on in this country? This is a democracy, right? And unless you're going to argue that there's some political conspiracy to oppress women from getting 50% of their say, then I think you've got a lot of proving to do.
For something to be considered oppression, it needs to have three components. It's in the national consciousness of the dominant culture, it's reinforced through the institutions of society, and there's an imbalance of economic, social, and political power.
Let's keep those three criteria in mind, okay? And we're going to examine each and every single one of your points using your own criteria.
I would say that sexism against women is pretty embedded in the dominant culture.
Wait a minute, what? Elliot Rodgers as an example of institutionalized sexism against women? So how many people do you know supported Elliot Rodgers' manifesto of, killing women who refused to sleep with him, and killing all men who got those women to sleep with them? Yeah, how many people do you know support such an ideology? That's right, none.
But feel free to disagree. Socially, the idea that men are dominant and powerful and should be in charge is perpetuated basically everywhere. And on the flip side, femininity being associated with weakness is also heavily perpetuated.
Well, yeah, femininity is undesirable when it comes to men, just as masculinity is undesirable when it comes to women. Now, obviously, this is just a very general trend, and this does not encompass every single example of every single man and woman in society. But generally speaking, we all do have established roles to play here in society. Whether they be beneficial or not, these are the crosses we all bear. And this is true irrespective of whether you are a man or a woman. I don't need some new wave, third-gen feminism movement to tell me how to break out of my own gender role. I did it by myself, through my own strength, and through accepting who I am and being proud and happy with who I am. And to be honest, I don't think girls need feminism either when it comes to that, because I think they're just as capable of doing what I did when breaking out of their established role in society.
What other social institutions that keep women down do we also see? Sexualized violence.
Sexualized violence? Is that one of those feminese terms that I don't know, because I don't exactly know what that's referring to?
The objectification and dehumanization of women.
Objectification of women. Well, this is, again, something that happens to everyone, of every wake in life. We're all dehumanized in some way, shape, or form. If you're going to claim that the media only adds pictures of sexy ladies just to get the attention of men, or to get the attention of women who want to be those sexy ladies as objectification, you could likewise claim the opposite of very ripped and well-built men being used as objectification towards men. Again, why do you only think that this is exclusive to women?
Victim blaming.
Victim blaming. Yeah, this is another one of those feminese things that they often talk about, but never really delve too deeply into. And I have to ask, when was the last time you honestly heard of like a rape case where society was like, "Oh, well, you got raped? Well, you deserved it, you dumb bitch." No, we don't say that because we are more compassionate people than that, at least most of us. Now, I'm going to make this perfectly clear. I would never blame a rape victim for getting raped. If someone got raped, man or woman, I would feel sorry for them, and I would offer my deepest condolences, because that is probably a very traumatic experience. And, you know, I have a thing called empathy, right? But what I can say is that I feel just a little bit disheartened when people take that and stretch it to the extreme, and they don't take measures to protect themselves. Like, yeah, no one deserves to get raped, but if you're stupid enough to get drunk off your brains, walk off with a stranger, and then go with him to the back alley where no one can hear you scream, then I'm sorry, you're an idiot.
And the fact that women can't walk to their cars by themselves at night because rape is a constant threat.
Women can't walk to their cars in the middle of the night by themselves. Well, yeah, this goes back to the whole victim blaming thing again, right? You know, you most certainly can do whatever you want to. It's a free country. But if you're going to walk into the middle of the night by yourself and attempt to find your car, then you're an idiot, because that's not safe, regardless of whether you're a man or a woman. Does that mean you deserve whatever misfortunes befall you as a result of terrible people who attempt to rob you and or rape you? Of course not. But again, that just means you're not very prudent with your own safety.
Economically, women still earn between 77 and 85 cents to every man's dollar on average.
Which, of course, begs the question, if women were able to do equivalent work to men for 20 cents cheaper, why doesn't every single company in the world just hire women? But, you know, that aside, how exactly do you determine equivalent amount of work? Is it the same job? You realize that there are nuances within the same job, or the same position, right? For example, if you were going to analyze two positions at some random company, well, maybe two people fulfill two different types of work, even though they're technically working at the same job. Maybe they might be doing two separate projects, or maybe one is devoting a lot more hours to the job compared to the other, which honestly seems to be the case.
Politically, there are currently 99 women in Congress out of 535 total seats. That means that only 18.5% of people in positions of political power are women.
So which would you prefer? Would you prefer to have the most competent people running your country, regardless of whether they were men or women? Or would you just enforce a quota onto Congress just to have an equivalent amount of women just because you can?
It's almost impossible to discuss feminism without bringing up the idea of the patriarchy.
But of course, the patriarchy is central to feminist ideology, and like I said, that central core element happens to be full of shit.
The patriarchy is a social system in place that values masculine traits over feminine traits, and in which men are considered dominant to women. While the patriarchy negatively affects all genders, women get the short end of the stick in this scenario.
What scenarios are you talking about? In any first world country, where are women's rights being denied? Or where do women not get an equivalent amount of opportunity to fulfill whatever they want compared to men?
This scenario being reality. Some people on the internet, particularly straight white middle class males, take this as an assault on men. It's not an anti-male sentiment, it simply points out that men systematically benefit because of their gender.
This is an assault on men because you are claiming that society in general, which you claim is pretty much put in motion and run by masculine values and, again, by men in power, is responsible for institutionalized sexism. And yeah, this is an attack on men because most men aren't fucking sexist.
However, that's not to say that men aren't negatively affected by the patriarchy, a system that, by every account, should be benefiting them. Feminism opposes harmful gender roles and expectations that negatively affect men and women, and by extension, anyone that doesn't fit perfectly into the male or female category. When men are told to grow a set, or to man up, or to stop acting like a girl, and basically aren't allowed to show any sort of emotion, that's something that feminism also opposes. Feminism opposes any sort of expectations put on men to be strong or macho, the breadwinner of the family, and to only like masculine activities. However, feminism doesn't see anything wrong with being or liking any of these things. It just aims to give men and women and people of all genders the choice to be as masculine or as feminine as they want.
I never heard a feminist complain that a man is supposed to sacrifice his life just so women and children can get off with their lives. I've never heard a feminist complain that men are the primary, and I do say in big capital letters, primary demographic of homeless people here in North America, and yet we have no men's shelters here in North America. Yeah, it only seems that feminism is concerned with what happens to women, which of course is not surprising given the name. But don't fucking say that you are for equal rights, because that is just a bunch of bullshit.
Basically, feminism is not anti-male rights.
Then explain this. Now, this is an MRA conference held at the University of Toronto about a year ago. Now, if you listen carefully, and as the camera will show, there are a bunch of feminists protesting this conference, making a huge loud ruckus so no one can hear what the conference speakers are saying, and someone pulls the fire alarm in order to silence the MRAs for good. So yeah, I can hear the equality just emanating from their actions.
Focusing on racial issues of minorities is not a threat to white people in the same way that focusing on gender issues is not a threat to men.
True, if we were only talking about the rights of African Americans, then it wouldn't be a threat to the rights of the rest of the population. But if we were talking about the rights of African Americans at the expense of the rest of the population, or the supremacy of one race over another, then that's a totally different story. And to be honest, that's what feminism is.
The goal is not to demonize men, but to better understand the social constructions that are in place that affect the way that both genders are perceived.
So feminism basically says this: men are responsible for all that has happened in society that we feminists don't like, because, you know, men have positions of power, and because they have positions of power, they control every wake of life, and because they control every wake of life, then anything we don't like is pretty much a byproduct of men or male values. Yeah, don't seek to demonize men, huh? Bullshit!
Basically, women are not evil creatures trying to take away your rights. They're just trying to have the same opportunities that you do.
So using those three criteria she just mentioned, and all the examples she listed, How many of those examples fall under those three criteria? Let's hear those criteria again. The first point is that it has to be in our natural consciousness as the dominant culture. Well, male culture is not the dominant culture. The dominant culture is primarily egalitarian. It is equal. Both men and women, both male values and female values are celebrated and in many cases parodied and in many cases mocked. So in all of her examples, do any of those examples really show that they are in the prevailing mindset of society or even just men in general? I don't think so. Through all of her examples, were any of those reinforced through the institutions of society? Do we applaud rapists? Do we applaud psychos like Elliot Rodgers? Do we celebrate the fact that women are not able to go to their cars at night for fear of getting raped or killed? No, we don't. And finally, is there an imbalance of power between men and women in any of these situations? From what I can tell, all of them except one do not show examples of this. And that one example that is the exception is that, women can't go out in the middle of the night alone to their cars for fear of getting raped. And this is the whole thing about, taking precautions. And no, it's not a sexist thing that women can't do this. It is a difference, a physical difference between a 5-foot, 100-pound girl versus a 6-foot, 200-pound guy. That's not sexist. That's just physical differences that need to be taken into account. As far as I can tell, you didn't even answer the question. All you did was say, what about men? Who gives a shit? Women are more oppressed anyway. Yeah, equal rights, my fucking ass.